Welcome to Solutions with Courtney Anderson. I am Courtney Anderson, your host. I always mention that I would appreciate if you came to CourtneyAnderson.com and shared your feedback with me. Also, you'll have a page that is devoted just to this episode. This is episode 167. 167 episodes of Solutions with Courtney Anderson. Courtney Anderson has been completed. It is awesome and exciting, and I appreciate you being part of our community. Again, if you come to our show website, you'll find the page. It's just for this episode, episode 167. This, of course, is one of the Joyful Art of Business series shows, and that is a series dedicated to anything that helps us practice the joyful art of business, which is the idea that whatever we're doing, whether it's paid or not paid, we're calling it our business, and then that we're bringing something uniquely ours, our talent, our perspective, our behavior, our personality, we're calling that art. And my argument is that it's not enough just to look at how much money we make or what other people think about our job, but we need to really ask ourselves and prioritize as an ROI metric, return on our investment, how we feel. If you're feeling good most of the time or the majority of the time, that's a good indicator. If you're feeling bad, that's an indicator that this is not really the best outcome and that we need to potentially make different choices, right? How we feel matters a lot. So this show is one, specifically our show title today is I Am Competing with 3 billion people for my job? Really? I am competing with 3 billion people for my job? Really? Yes. So the show title is making a statement and then asking to see if that's accurate. The statement is, I'm competing with 3 billion people for my job, and then it's asking the question in the title, really? And my argument is, yes, you are. And one of the reasons that this show has to be done is because, well, one, we have a global community, right? So I am able, now that we've expanded our show and we're adding new resources and bringing new technology and data into my organization, I'm able to see exactly where community members are accessing our program. And it is exciting because, again, we have people all over the world that are listening and being part of our program. And that makes me thrilled to be your host and guide. And it is a reminder, just as it is when I have the opportunity to travel and live in different parts of the world, that we are all interested in and focused on so many of the similar concepts, right? We want to reach and surpass our goals. We want to be able to spend time doing things that we actually don't hate, right? That's a kind of a way of looking at the joyful art of business, right? That, hey, I'm excited, I'm engaged, I'm passionate. All the things that you know that you definitely will hear when you read any sort of business periodical, and definitely if you've studied business, you'll these are the topics of great importance, right? Engagement, commitment, retention. Well, how do you achieve that? Well, ideally, the people want to do it at some level. If people are miserable and hate what they're doing, it's hard to make them feel legitimately and authentically passionate and be engaged because they are miserable. So we humans, we're on planet Earth, most of us. Certainly we do have a few of us that we're aware of that are on continuous international space stations. And of course, from what I understand, from what I read, just as a layperson, that we've got lots of different international programs that are in the works to potentially have semi-permanent or permanent humans on different parts, on different different, I was going to say different planets, but not just planets, because I know that there were discussions about moons and different bodies in our solar system, and I know that Potentially we may have humans on Mars or, like I said, other locations other than just so Earth centric. We're so Earth focused. Uh, and I think all that's really fascinating and interesting and exciting. And but the majority of us are focusing on being on Earth, and at least for the time being. And so this show is the title comes from a link to an article from Gallup, the Business Journal. The Gallup Business Journal. And so if you come to the show page, of course, CourtneyAnderson.com, episode 167, then you'll come right to our page, which is just for the show. And you can download our program if you haven't already done so. You'll get the full show notes and the links. And there also are our show sponsors. It is a whole new world for me to learn how to do these programs, how to learn the technology to distribute them and disseminate them through our site and through other partners, through iTunes, through Stitcher, through Libsyn, through so many of the different avenues that we're opening up, and then to be able to bring on sponsors and affiliates to work with so that we can continue to have the revenue to support these growing business ventures. So it's a lot that I've learned. It's a lot of work that goes into it, and I really have to explicitly ask you to support our show by either leaving ratings or reviews, sharing this on social media, and please support our sponsors. If you see a link to something that might be of interest to you, please click on it through our site so that our sponsors know that we are bringing our community members to their products and services. So all of that's to say that, again, this is everything that we do, in my mind, is from a global or species-wide perspective. Obviously, I'm based in the States, and so I'm going to think of a lot of things based on that perspective. And so one of the things that this show, again, the statistic, 3 billion people competing for my job. What? It's from a 2011 article that is linked to via the Gallup Business Journal. That it's actually from a larger work that was entitled "The Coming Jobs War." So the author of the quote is an excerpt from The Coming Jobs War. It's written by Jim Clifton. And so if you come to the show page, you can just click on it and you can see where the numbers are coming from. And I've placed some of this into our show page link. There's some quotes and some links. And Jim Clifton, the author of this book, The Coming Jobs War, also is chairman and CEO of Gallup, right? Gallup organization, which is one of the leaders in terms of workplace consulting and data and leadership services. So certainly someone that has a wealth of data at their fingertips. What are they talking about? 3 billion people for your job, my job, really? What? Okay, so go and see the quote. And here I'm going to start giving you at least the argument that the author of The Coming Jobs War is using to sort of support this 3 billion number, and then where I'm going with it and what I did in terms of my own individual interpretation, either in addition to or in lieu of what the author of the work was referencing. Okay, so reading from the article. A good job is a job with a paycheck from an employer and steady work that averages 30 plus hours per week. Global labor economists refer to these as formal jobs. Sometimes leaders and economists blur the line between good jobs, parentheses, formal jobs, and informal jobs. Informal jobs are jobs with no paycheck, no steady work. All right, so let's get here an understanding of what the definition is, right? Because the title I wrote originally says, I'm competing with 3 billion people for my job. Okay, so now what we're doing is we're defining exactly what do we mean by job and by good job. And specifically formal job, a job where, okay, I'm your employee, I'm going to come here absent any sort of traumatic change in either the organizational sustainability, meaning if they don't go out of business or cease to exist, and I don't do anything in violation of whatever my job requirements and our labor law requirements are, then I have a job, right? Like I'm going to come, this week for 30 plus weeks. I'm going to come next week for 30 plus weeks. And I'm going to keep doing that unless something, again, traumatic happens to the organization and or something happens to my behavior where I'm not in compliance with whatever the expectations are for me to maintain my work. A formal job, right? So if I do this, that's where you get into discussions with people where I get paid every week, or I get paid every 2 weeks, or I get paid once a month, or I get paid every week. The only way you're talking about a paycheck and getting paid in the future is if you believe that you're entered in some sort of arrangement and agreement where there will be an ongoing paycheck, right? It's a formal ongoing job. It's not sort of, hey, I was walking around and somebody stopped me and said, hey, I'll give you, a little bit of money if you come over here and help me move some of these trees around on this piece of property, and that's a one-time thing. So I'm not gonna be having a discussion about do I get paid every 2 weeks or once a month, and who pays whatever taxes might be related to the local government or whatever. I'm not having that discussion because it's not an ongoing formal job. It's just an informal opportunity that I may take or not take, but I'm not having some sort of expectation of I can build a future on this, right? I can plan a payday. I can make decisions about whatever, bills or obligations I have. Okay, so we went through all that to talk about what we mean by take your job. Okay, so we're talking about something that you can at some level rely on, right? Steady work. Okay. So from the same source, right, from the Gallup Business Journal, of the 7 billion people on Earth, that's a rough number. It's not the exact moment of people on Earth at the moment that you and I are having this program, because that number is in flux as people are passing away, and then there are people who are being born, and so, but that's a round number. Of the 7 billion people on Earth, there are 5 billion adults aged 15 or older. Again, not exact specific numbers, but in general, round figures. 7 billion people on our planet Earth. I talked a little bit earlier. We do not know what our future holds as our species does continue to expand to other options for us to live and build ongoing communities and colonies. But as it is now, 7 billion people on Earth, 5 billion people age 15 and older. We are excluding people, I'm assuming because the author did this because, when we're talking about, 3-year-olds, are they competing with me for my job? Probably not in most parts of the world. Because of the nature of what I do and the nature of the lack of similar skills in a 3-year-old, and also in many parts of the world it's prohibited to have 3-year-olds do the same type of work that an adult does who's 30 years old. And so this is my own interpreting that's sort of, we're just excluding children, right? Okay. Of the 5 billion, 3 billion tell Gallup. Gallup, of course, is the organization. This is Gallup Business Journal, and also the author of this book that this is an excerpt from is the chairman and the CEO of Gallup at the time of writing the book. All right, so of the 5 billion people, right? So that's the 5 billion age 15 years and up. 3 billion tell Gallup they work or want to work. So 3 billion people have told this organization they work or want to work. Okay. So remember, we excluded people assuming at some age people are, children or still sort of developing. And then on the other end of the spectrum, there are going to be people who are age 15 and older, but maybe they're 105 years old. So maybe they're not working, and maybe they don't want to work, right? So out of the 5 billion, maybe people will be infirm or ill or disabled, or just financially have their own resources where they don't have an interest in what we would call work, right? Where you're going to an employer and getting wages and all this. They don't have an interest in that because they already have other resources and investments and income, and so no, they're not working. Okay. 7 billion people on the planet. 5 billion people age 15 and older. Of those 5 billion people, 3 billion say that they work and or want to work. Okay, so that's where we are. That's where the show title. I'm competing with 3 billion people for my job? Really? Well, that's where we got the 3 billion. Yeah. It's 3 billion people on the planet who say that they work or want to work. So roughly, yes. Now you're one of the 3 billion, and of course it's not an exact number, it's a round number. So it's not like there's you and then there's 3 billion other people and then it's you against all 3 billion. Obviously, my point simply is that you need to not think in these limited worldviews where I live in you know, Mexico City, or I live in Miami, or I live in Hong Kong, and I'm only worried about what's happening here. You should be aware of what's happening. But one of the things I talk about in a lot of programs is that if you open up and expand your definition of opportunity, literally, geographically, regionally, culturally, you'd be surprised at the different things that you can learn, and you'll also be surprised at the amount of opportunity in terms of professional development and economic realization of different work and clients that are available to you. So think big. That's why we're talking 3 billion, because people get so focused on these places. I do understand that some people will say, I don't ever want to go anywhere else and I don't care. Fine. Even if you stay stationary exactly where you are, you're still on the same planet. That's why we started off talking about planets, right? Not just because I love, learning about uh, different parts of our solar system and of our universe, but because it's relevant. We're all, except for the few that are beginning to live in other space stations and or colonies. It's, to the best of my knowledge, a very small number of us humans. The majority, we're all on Earth. This is one place. You may be in a specific part of Earth, but you and I are still in the same place. And there's a lot going on. So you may not care. You may think, well, I don't really care what happens in Miami. I've never been there. I could care less. Or you might think, I don't have any interest in what happens in, Rio de Janeiro, or I'm not interested in what happens in Nuremberg, Germany. Well, that's fine. But it matters because guess what? You're in the same boat as everybody else. We're on the same planet. And there's a lot of other issues, demographics, population, but our numbers, 7 billion people. Roughly 3 billion people that say they work or want to work. You're one of them if you want to work or you work. And many people, and we know this, even if you've never particularly had an interest or in going to many other places and you just think, I live in the best place ever. Why would I want to go anywhere? Okay, fine. There are probably people that you've heard of and or met who have come from other places. I know I have worked in many parts of the world, and I have heard in every place of the world every part of the world I've ever been to, I've heard people there that live there and are based there talk about people from the other places that are coming there. Sometimes for a positive reason, but often for a negative. Right? Those people are coming and taking our jobs. I've heard that in South Africa. I've heard that in Asia. I've heard that in Australia. I've heard that in Europe. I've heard that in the US. I've heard that in Mexico. I've heard it everywhere I've been. So even if you don't go anywhere else, that doesn't mean other people aren't going to go move around the planet and have opportunities and potentially be competing with you more directly. All right, so let's go back to the quote. Okay, so we have 7 billion of us are on Earth together. Hey, isn't Earth awesome? Yes, it is, to the best of our knowledge. Many people, of course, 5 billion over age 15. Of those 5 billion, 3 billion want work or want to work. Again, some people may be elderly and or infirm and or financially independent or whatever. They're not interested nor worried about work. The 3 billion people work or want to work. Let's continue with our quote. Most of the 3 billion people need, not want, but need a full-time formal job. The problem is that there are currently only 1.2 billion full-time formal jobs in the world. All right, 3 billion people. The author is arguing that most of these people need a full-time formal job. So again, not that thing where, hey, I'll give you a little bit of money, you come do this thing, help me, with this one task right now. But something formal where you're going to get a payday and you can make a plan for how much you're going to have every, pay period and what you can, how much you can pay for somewhere to live or for food or for any other bills. I mean, you can make a plan, a job that you can count on, right? A salary, an income, wages, whatever. You can go to a bank and say, this is how much money I make every month or every year. And then they can better evaluate, okay, based on that and all these other factors, then this is how much money we would, lend you, right, to buy a house or invest in your business or whatever. Okay, so the problem is there are currently 1.2 billion full-time formal jobs in the world. Now, I'm not by any means any type of mathematic expert, but if there are 3 billion people that work or want to work, and there's only 1.2 billion full-time formal jobs, then there's a gap. So back to the quote. The quote says, "This is a potentially devastating global shortfall of about 1.8 billion good jobs. It means that global unemployment for those seeking a formal good job with a paycheck and 30 plus hours of steady work approaches a staggering 50%, with another 10% wanting part-time work. This also means that potential societal stress and instability lies within 1.8 billion, nearly a quarter of the world's population." So I mentioned that this quote came from this executive at the organization Gallup, and that there's a book that this was an excerpt from. That's all, and the book is called "The Coming Jobs War." And so even when you go follow the link that's in our show page to this excerpt on the Gallup Business Journal, basically then the author goes on and talks about, hey, there's 1.8 billion people that want this full-time job with 30 plus hours a week, and they can plan their life around, and that there's going to be a war, the coming jobs war, and that the instability, right, that this is going to lead to all kinds of problems. So this is the larger issues, and we're not talking about that in this show, of course. What we're talking about is just having to have some framework of reference for thinking about ourselves, just little old us, that we are on this planet, and there are billions of people with us. Whether or not we ever go where they are, or they ever come around, we are exactly is not the point. The point is that we're all on the same planet, and that as we've improved our technology and our logistics and our communication, that we get this cliche, right, that the Earth, that it's a smaller planet. I don't know about that, but it's easier for us to impact each other. So you can put something on the internet, and I can access it no matter where you are in the world, and vice versa. You could potentially, though, provide services and be employed by organizations somewhere else in the world if your expertise allowed you to do that, if it was location independent. The other thing is we've improved our ability to get around, right? High-speed trains, still have an incredible shipping network. We have aviation. And what we are doing is the more that we communicate and relate with each other, then the more we are impacted. And instead of just focusing, I know certainly in the States it's something that happens. It happens all over. I've seen it on news reports and media all over the world. But you get this localism, right? So in this city, here's what the current economic situation is, or this is what the current unemployment figures are, which are helpful and important if you're there, if you work there. And maybe that you're based there, but maybe your work is location independent, or you travel to work somewhere else or whatever, so it doesn't really impact you, but it's still important to know. My argument is we need to think a little bit bigger than that and think about what's our global situation. And parts of the globe, you're going to have very high full-time formal employment. And parts of the globe, you're going to have very, very low. But instead of us localizing it so much, we should maybe just take a moment to think about, from whatever perspective, the fact that it's still one group one group on one planet. And I think historically, as we didn't have so much communication and interrelationships, you could make the argument, hey, well, I really don't care what happens in that one place because nobody's ever even been there. Nobody even knows. They don't even let anybody in that place. Nobody comes out of there. We don't trade with them. No one there buys our things. We don't talk to them or have anything to do with them, and whatever. We hope nothing bad happens to them. I would argue, though, that when we talk about a lot of the things that are really at the forefront of our concerns, when we talk about climate change and global warming, when we talk about water issues, access to water. When we saw what happened when there's a environmental impact of a nuclear plant, or in one part of the world, even people who might think, oh, I don't really have any interest in what happened there. Well, yeah, you do, because guess what? We're on one planet. So the air, the water, all these things, they're not cognizant of our artificially drawn little borders and jurisdictions and all that. We're just one planet. So you do care, because what happens there impacts you here. Are you breathing? So you do care. And we have so many different ways. So of course, there are people who totally focus on environmental issues, people focused on specific types of environmental issues with air quality, people focused on water issues. Water issues will continue to be a huge thing. A part of that is my own bias because I'm based in a very dry desert in the western U.S., right? And so it's a local issue, and it's one that is a regional issue, and it's one that's a global issue. Water rights are incredibly important, not something that you talk about necessarily a lot on the leading and popular media, but I guarantee you that definitely will increase in importance as time goes on, as we continue to have a population thriving and access to clean water is really important. So all these things impact us irrespective of who quote they are and who quote we are, and whether or not we have any particular interest in going to places or don't really or think we can just be isolationists. The challenge is not really. And as we've opened up trade, of course, it's opened up opportunity, and the business entrepreneur part of me loves it. I just love going out in the world and being in different places and learning about how people run their organizations. We can all learn from each other. There's so many different ways to achieve things, and it's awesome and exciting. On the other hand, though, what it means is that you and I need to pay attention and understand that it's not just one. Like I said, I've seen this in media all over the world, where the media does mention that there's globalization and that people do even physically move to different places for work. They do mention that, but it often is in this narrative of us versus them, right? That they, whoever they are, depending on where you are on the planet, is coming in from wherever, whatever place, and they are, quote, taking our jobs and whatever. The issue is, of course, that the concern is the same job thing, right? And again, I have heard this everywhere. So I think we need to look a little bit bigger, though, and understand that this is a big picture. And what you and I do individually is not just segregated to some part of our shared planet. That we need to understand what's happening at a larger scale. And I think part of my interpretation of sort of this quote, right, where they're talking about there's a staggering 50%, right? Okay, I'll reread the sentence. It means, from the quote, it means that global unemployment for those seeking a formal, good job with a paycheck and 30 plus hours of steady work approaches a staggering 50%. Now you would say, well, 50%, it's insane. I mean, some places, it's single digits, high single digits is considered bad. In some parts of the world, unemployment, is 90% and higher. So it's silly, right? It's so localized. Well, sort of. But what happens there impacts us here, no matter where here and there are in our artificial definitions, because we're on one body together. And we do need to understand this. One part of, I think, what the author's arguing in this short excerpt is that the ramifications of having regions with not enough good formal jobs is going to spill over and affect everybody else, right? That's when you see words and you're talking about societal stress and instability. I mean, those are the things that lead to all the things that worry all of us, right? Criminal acts. Acts of violence, acts to people who feel sometimes that they have no other option to change the system than through violence. When you talk about, of course, war, conflict, displaced populations, you every time this happens, then it impacts all of us. So we can't just sit somewhere and say, well. Because somewhere over there, wherever random in your mind that place is, someone from there will impact you and does impact you in a positive way and mostly a neutral way, and sometimes in a really direct, not great way. Because what people might be suffering from one part of the world doesn't just stay isolated to that one part of the world. Especially as we just talked about earlier, transportation, right? People can get on a plane, a ship, a bus, a train, and go all kinds of places. And do great things. And do things where people get that sort of, that xenophobic, oh, they're coming to take our jobs. And sometimes people can commit acts that may not be readily understandable to somebody who didn't understand the full context of what that person was experiencing in that over their place, but they will behave in ways and commit acts that definitely will get people's attention. Whether it's criminal or some other acts that are violent, perhaps. So yes, we have to pay attention because we are them. And this one-sided focus that I hear and see all over the world, well, people do pay attention and they do notice this because one thing I hear it's very one-sided is they are taking our jobs. Now, is it true that people do move around the planet to take better advantage economically? Yeah, I know that's not new. And as the transportation and the logistics and the opportunities open up, then people do even more. Because if you and I are in the place that is the place where we're not having the opportunity to get our good formal job that we need, we're either going to stay there in a bad situation economically, which is also going to impact everything else, right, in our lives, our emotions, our health, our family, our loved ones, our sense of community, our self-esteem, our dreams, all of this. Or if there's a chance for us, all we have to do is just relocate, and there's a chance, then yeah, people are going to take it, and that's what we see. And instead of people, I think, having a broader understanding of this issue, what you'll tend to see and permeating cultures, again, everywhere I've ever been, is people do notice that there's this global thing and that people do show up from wherever and they, quote, take jobs. Now, that's a whole other debate. I would ask, though, if people are willing to move, sometimes just a regular move, right? Oh, let me find someone to help me ship my furniture. And sometimes people move illegally. Sometimes people risk their lives. People die just to get from wherever they are to that other place where they believe that there's a better economic opportunity. If someone's willing to die and risk their own life, their family's life, their children's life, their elderly parents' life, and people do this by sea, by land, that's a pretty strong incentive. And the issue is, what's our job? That's a lot of the dynamic you've heard in the last couple of years, because technology's opened up where you never had the opportunity before for organizations to be based in Europe and have a staff member that works while they live in South America. You can do it now in a lot of jobs. The whole thing of offshoring, where an organization can go say, hey, look, we'll go build a facility in a different place from where we're headquartered, and then we'll have cheaper labor costs, maybe cheaper infrastructure costs, and then that'll give us a competitive advantage in the marketplace. Initially, people stereotypically thought, oh, maybe those are just lower wage jobs, but you've seen that across spectrums. We're professional, high wage jobs. People can, if I need, someone who can read a medical X-ray, do they have to be based in the same place in Europe where my organization is? Do they have to be based in North America? Not necessarily. If it's digital, I can get somebody who has those qualifications. They can read it somewhere else, and they may have cheaper labor. Often they will. Certainly, it's happened in the legal field. That's one of my qualifications as an attorney, a lawyer. It definitely has happened, and it's changing everything. And people can argue and bicker about whether it's quote good or quote bad, but my issue is it is. So yes, are you competing with 3 billion people for your job? I'm in art. Yeah, you are, and you need to be aware of it. Not aware of it from the perspective of lamenting and complaining about how there's too many people on the planet, which some people have a very legitimate issue, and people are working very assiduously to try to address some of these population concerns. So I'm not at all diminishing those. What I am saying is that in the interim, what are you going to do to try to put yourself in as much of a position of it, so that you can have a job, the good formal job? Standing around and lamenting that other people are moving around is not going to do anything to help you and your chances. So when you go to the show page, again, CourtneyAnderson.com, episode 167, Joyful Art of Business series, I'm competing with 3 billion people for my job? Really? Yes, you are. So I put a link to, I thought it was a good general overview article from a periodical U.S. News and Special Reports. And so it's an article about how to stay competitive in a global jobs marketplace. What a coincidence. And it's just a piece, and it's got some good suggestions. And so the link's on the show page, and it's got some suggestions. And this is to answer the question, what do I do? Okay, if I am competing with 3 billion people, roughly, for my job, what am I going to do? So there are many other ways you could be working on this. Maybe you're working on alleviating some of the parts of the world where the people really are in a lot of distress and need. Maybe you're addressing some of the issues of climate, of things that are impacting people who do risk their lives to move. Maybe you're dealing with your political system in your part of the world where you live to try to address some of these things from a political or a legal system of people coming in and having the right to work and all this kind of stuff. Population control. While you're doing all of that, also you want to put yourself in the best position possible. Now, if you're one of the billions on the planet who don't work and don't want to work, then this really doesn't worry you. Unless you think there might be the possibility that you may in the future want to work or need to work. In which case, then I suggest you start thinking about what are you going to do to compete. And part of it is you have to think about this. If you're in part of the world right now where there's diminished opportunity and people do leave to go somewhere else to get a better shot at this formal job, then you already have in some ways an advantage because you have all these incentives to want better. And often what happens is people leave a part of the world. And I mean, it could be, it may be a village or a street or a city or whatever, that there's not a lot of opportunity and somebody goes somewhere else and then the word gets back, right? Through people, tell people. Now people put it all, hey, so-and-so moved to some other place and now they just put it on their social media. I just saw how great things are there. Okay, well then that's communicate even faster. You don't have to even wait for the word to get back, right? And gossip to spread. And sometimes you can just go online yourself. Wow, that's where they're living now. That looks really nice. Or that's where they're working. Wow. Now I can see it. That makes me even more incentivized to go and see what opportunities are there for me. So that's sort of, in some ways, is an advantage because you have a little bit of motivation externally applied. If you're in part of the world where you're lamenting, oh, people come, quote, here and take my job, and you're not as motivated to go somewhere else, hey, that's great that you're already in the place. It's working for you. You feel comfortable. You want to stay where you are, and there are opportunities. That's wonderful. What good fortune you have. Now, what are you going to do, though, to ensure whether you stay where you are or someone else comes there or the situation changes in terms of all of the multitude of factors that when you study history, and this is why I've mentioned in many other programs, I love history. It was my minor when I was in my undergraduate degree program, just because I love it. Because it's the story of us, right? And it reminds you of how many of the things that you think are sort of, facts aren't. They're just temporary situations. So go back and read your history and look and see all the different parts of the world that have been the economic leader and the powerhouse. Throughout different time periods, it's been basically everywhere at different times, except for some of the really newer in terms of how long we've had records of the societies that were based in some parts of the world that might be maybe more geographically isolated. But definitely for places that we have records and access, the power shifts are incredible. And it's all the same things. Fighting over land, fighting over war, fighting over resources. Technology always matters. Leadership, the human, failures of leaders, the human exceptionalism of leaders and strategic thinking, money, power, respect. And it impacts, and then, cultural issues and spiritual beliefs and, all these types of things. So you see that this stuff isn't set at all. It's fluid. I don't know what's going to happen later today or tomorrow or in the future. So you can't make the assumption if you're somewhere now where you think, oh, this is a great place. Maybe it is right now. That doesn't mean it's going to be that way for the rest of your life. So what do? Have a plan. For what? To be able to compete globally. So whether it's 3 billion today or however many billions in the future, that you're going to be at the best that you can be so that you're going to put yourself in the best possible position. Again, so the article I linked to in terms of what you can do, it's how to stay competitive in a global jobs marketplace. One, they said soft skills are key. Yes, soft skills. How do you treat people? And the basics. Do you show up on time when you said you would? Things like that. I'd even add soft skills like hygiene, things of that nature really matter. Now, there are going to be different cultural expectations depending on where you are, which brings us to the second point from that article, which says quickly understand cultural nuances. This is a big deal. And if you haven't lived in a lot of different parts of the world or traveled a lot, you don't realize how many of the things that, again, that you think are facts or that you think are what we should do, they're not. They're just temporary things that people do in a certain place. It's almost like this. How when you go to some people's other somebody else's house or place where they live, their apartment or whatever. It's always kind of weird. Like you'll look and you'll think, well, that's how they put their towels, or that's where they eat, or that's how they put their furniture, or that's how they do this, and you'll think, well, we don't do that at all at my house. That's weird. Well, no, it isn't. It's just that you went to somebody else's territory, and that's how they set up their world, and that's how they do what they want. It doesn't mean your way or their way is right. It just means they are. You need to figure out really quickly that none of this stuff is universal. It's just what you're used to. So just like you wouldn't go to somebody else's place where they live when we're invited to eat with them or something and start telling them how stupid they were and how dare they, use those types of plates, and you can't believe that they put their chair in that part of the room because you never would have done that or whatever. You wouldn't do that because it's rude and it's inappropriate, and you also know the cliche, when in Rome, right? You're going to respect other people and understand that your way at your house is just that. It's your way at your house. So it doesn't mean anything about how other people do things at their house, and you're not in a position to chastise them or do anything other than to be respectful. It's the same thing when you go out in the world. The way you do things and the way you're used to them in that part of the world where you come from is just that. It's just temporary. And just as respectful as you'd be when you're in someone's home visiting, you're going to be that way when you're out in the world. And you're going to learn that your way is just that. It's your way. You're still going to do it inside your place where you live as much as you can based on the culture, but you need to disassociate yourself from some weird perception that this is the right way, or this is how it's done. No, it isn't. It's how it's done there at a certain period of time. Open up your mind. Cultural nuances. And there's a lot to pick up, but it's not anything more unusual or difficult than just going over to see somebody and going to their place for the first time and just seeing that, okay, people do things differently. Respect, respect, respect. Which means treat people the way they want to be treated. Not what you want, what they want. They're not you, so treating them how you want is not respect. Remember, it also says that be aware of local differences. Again, there's so many of these. And again, nothing more frightening or weird than going to somebody else, next door that you've never been in their house. They're going to do stuff differently. They put their clothes in a different place. They're going to, put their stuff in their house in a different way. It's not anything frightening or weird. It's just everyone's different. You wouldn't be scared going to your somebody lives in your neighborhood. You're not going to be scared going to a different country, or having someone from a different country come to you, work with you. Same thing. Not hard or difficult or anything. Just be quiet, listen, ask questions respectfully. Oh, okay. Let me know where do you want me to put my shoes, or how do you want me to put my set my seat here at the table? Just ask. The people, professionally and politely, people are happy to tell you and show you what to do. There's another suggestion in this link that I would definitely suggest that you consider if you haven't already done so. It says add at least another language. Now, I've mentioned before in other programs that I had gotten my Spanish skills to a level that I was really happy. In fact, I conducted some corporate education and training programs in Spanish. This is a while. This is over a decade ago at this point. My skills have gotten rusty lately because I haven't been using them. So one of the things that's on my plate, my agenda to do, is to go and go to some schools, language schools that are immersion schools, where I can go visit a place where I'll use the language all day, and I'll use it getting around, and I'll force myself to use it more to try to start to refresh and enhance some of those skills. And that's my fault, my responsibility for not keeping up with what I need to. But you need to have as many different options available. And again, your house and your apartment and the way you do things is awesome, and it's your world. That's often why in programs I talk about your place where you reside is the happiest place on earth, because it's your place. You get to put your shoes and your clothes and your stuff and your plate and everything where you want, how you want. That's your world. When we go outside of our world, then we have to be aware of everybody else's individual preferences and needs. If you can enhance your skills, it's going to help you. So language is a big thing. It helps. Also, whatever your skill set is. So one, shore up your primary language that you use the most. Get those skills as elite and high level as you can. Reading, writing, communication. That'll help you immensely. If you can, add another language. And then look at your total list of skills. I talk about this in other programs, your skill inventory list. Everything that you can do. Your speaking, your tone of voice, your behavior. Can you juggle? Can you drive? Can you paint? Are you good at physical labor? I mean, anything you know. You have a knowledge of plumbing. You have a knowledge of cars. Anything it is, you need to start shoring that stuff up, because the skills are going to be what makes the difference. And then what we've talked about in other programs, then that positive part where you have confidence and you feel good about yourself. And the healthy thing is that as you change your thinking. You'll realize it doesn't hurt me or insult me or diminish anything in my place where I reside if I went over to my neighbor's place and they set up their, table differently and use their towels differently. It doesn't do anything to insult my way at my place. It's just a different way. So they're going to do their way and I'm going to do my way, and together it's a win-win, right? It's the same thing with this situation with the planet. You're going to get your skills to be the best. That article I also mentioned, that I linked to, that I was reading those points from, they also have some points about don't burn bridges and things like this, right? Like, you've got to understand this, my way or the highway, my way or no way, my way is right, is not going to help you. It's not going to help you if you're in one small town and you never leave there, because it's creating conflict with other people. You have to be open-minded. That doesn't mean you have to change the way you do things in the place where you reside. It doesn't mean any of that. What it means is you need to be confident enough and have enough maturity to be proud of who you are. You need to be putting in and being industrious in terms of enhancing your skills. And then you need to understand that you can be you, the best you possibly, and still other people can be the best them possibly, and together that should be a positive. It doesn't diminish you that somebody else is out there being the best they can be. What it might need to do is motivate you and think, well, if they're being the best they can be, I really need to be the best I can be. The level of contentment and stability and peace you have when you feel comfortable in who you are, when you feel comfortable in your opportunities in the world, is very powerful, which is the whole premise, right, of this, the piece that we base the show on, right, which is talking about the billions of people who want full-time work, and it just doesn't exist on a global perspective. And we need to be aware of this. As long as you're prepared and you have your skills and you keep taking in new information, that's part of what being part of this program today is. You're listening, hopefully you're reading a lot of the things I reference, you're reading on your own, you're researching, you're exploring your skills, you're enhancing your skills. Then you're going to be able to, you'll have the best possible opportunity to succeed. If you're not doing any of those things and you're creating conflict and you're difficult to work with, and you have an entitled sense of what you're, quote, owed in the world, you're going to have a really difficult time as these issues are just going to ramp up. We can predict, right? More technology, more access to different global pockets of expertise and labor. You need to make sure that you're focusing on a healthy, reasonable sense of you, feeling great about what you're doing and enhancing your skills, and understanding that none of us know everything we need to know. All of us are lifelong learners. And then it's pretty exciting and awesome, because you'll more likely than not, you'll land on your feet no matter what happens, because you have these skills. You're going to do everything you can. Now, of course, any of us could be struck by some awful, meteor hits our part of the planet, or, some horrible disaster or something, and but that's beyond our control. Within what we understand that we might be able to do something about, you need to reframe this in a positive way. You need to be motivated, and it's always exciting to learn what you're capable of in a really healthy, positive way. When you think, oh, I never thought I could do that, but I did. I learned that, or I'm really happy, or whatever. But lamenting that other people move around the planet, or the other people are, enhancing their skills, other than the fact that it does take up a little bit of your time, so I guess you're not bored, it's not accomplishing anything. Yeah, people are moving around the planet, and they're going to continue to, probably, as long as you have disparities and opportunity in different places. And you're going to have people who are really, really, really motivated to find this formal job. And when they find it, they're going to tell everybody that they knew and all their relatives and friends, and they're going to they repatriate funds, right? People will send money to different parts of the world to try to help their loved ones and friends and community that people haven't been able to move yet. And that's going to keep happening. It's been happening. It's going to keep happening. And you and I are going to do the exact same thing. We're in the place where, oh my goodness, there's no opportunity here. We are going to do what everybody else does. We're going to look around and try to see where there is opportunity. I'm arguing we need to stay a little bit ahead of that game by just keeping up with current events is an easy way. Pay attention to what's going on around you, and then we all need to work on our skills. And remember, soft skills are the key. How you relate to people. You need to understand that your way is just that, your way, and it works for you. But everybody else has their own little cultural nuance. There are going to be local differences everywhere. They're not any more unusual than what you would experience going over to see somebody that lives in your neighborhood. You've never been in their place. People just do stuff differently. It's not an insult. It's not a threat to you or anything. Okay? And this especially for people who, and especially in the States, because this is a bit of a challenge in some ways. If you only know one language, then that's okay. Then do what you can, but you need to make sure that your single language skills are really high level. You need to really master that one language. We've done programs on your vocabulary. Yeah, you really need to work on your mechanics, spelling, grammar, punctuation. You need to do the best you can with that one language and be at least a lead in that. And then I would strongly suggest, in whatever way you're able, expose yourself to other languages in some way. It's going to help you. It's not going to hurt you. But if you have really poor language skills across the board, you just have, your skills are poor in every language. You don't read or write any language well. That's really a hindrance. And again, this is to me, assuming that this is factually accurate in some rough sense. All right, so let's say roughly that these numbers are accurate. If this is, quote, real, as we understand it, then what can we do about it? Other than some people are preparing to go to other planets and have a colony and things like that, okay, fine. But in the interim, if we're here, this is Earth, these are the amount of people that are on it, this is the situation in terms of full-time formal jobs, then if that's some form of reality, then it's not going to hurt us to react to it, assuming that our choices would potentially have some sort of input on the outcome. People would not move to wherever it is that they're coming to, quote, take your job, unless they could actually get a job when they got there. Whether it's a formal job or they're doing it illegally or whatever. But if they weren't able to make money, then they wouldn't come. Because people risk their lives, and even if they don't, it's a huge upheaval. They're not doing this for no reason. So my argument is then, if someone else can come from somewhere else with huge disadvantages, right? In many instances, don't even have the legal authority to work and still be able to say, hey, I'm making more money than I was back where I came from, so it's worth it to me. Then you need to sit and look at your skills and ask yourself, if you have the legal right to work in some places, if you have some advantages, what are you doing to leverage these? Because lamenting how many people are on the planet, again, you can be active in ways that are part of a longer term solution, whether it's through the environment or through population issues or through health issues or whatever. That's part of it. But in the interim, for yourself, redirect your energy and focus on your own talents and skills and deploying those so that you feel your life is working for you. Then you're not going to have any ability or need or desire to sit around and lament what other people are doing for their life, because that's their business. The people who don't complain about somebody, quote, taking their jobs feel like they already have what it is they desired. So they're not worried. Whether it's their neighbor next door or it's someone who moved from another part of the planet, they don't really care. I mean, they just want somebody to, be a nice neighbor and not commit some sort of criminal act or hurt them. And then that person, if they work, then it really isn't their number one concern or concern at all. So focus on your own skills, develop those skills, and understand that you too have the same opportunity to look at this whole planet as an option, just like other people do. Let's start opening up your mind to the potential. So in this show, we asked, I'm competing with 3 billion people for my job? Really? And we answered, yes, you are. And I hope that some of the tools and tips that we provided and some of the things that we discussed were a starting point for you to start to think bigger picture. And remember, history is simply just that. They're just snapshots in time. What is or what you perceive to be today does not necessarily mean it's going to be anything tomorrow, because these things can happen. A natural disaster, an earthquake, and then we constantly have human issues with violence, and human issues with war, and human issues with, whatever. So all we can do, any of us, no matter where we are on the planet right now, is just take care of our individual skills and do everything that we can to develop those skills, understand that we are not the center of the universe. Our way is simply our way, and that when we interact with other people of a different way, all that is an opportunity for us to learn better how to work with other people, how to be friends with other people, and often you'll learn things you didn't know that will add to the quality of your life and in your enjoyment. It doesn't diminish you. It doesn't threaten you in any way. But this is potentially, assuming that we're taking these facts to be somewhat accurate, this is real. So the issue is, what are you going to do about it? My strong suggestion is you need to take seriously all the things I talk about developing those skills, broadening your interests, having your skill inventory, and you need to step it up. Thank you so much for being part of our program. Make sure to give us a rating or review wherever you access our program, iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, Blog Talk Radio, wherever it is in the world. Please post us on your social media and let other people know what we're doing as we continue to grow our program. And please, please, please support our show sponsors. We are doing everything we can to rapidly grow all of our resources and programs available to you, but we have to, of course, have the ability to support that in a way where everything is freely accessible and downloadable throughout the world. So please support our show sponsors by investing in any products or services that you do see on our website. Thank you for being here.